He is the insider on the NFL today on CBS, America's most watched network. Jason LaCanfora. How you doing, Locke?
I'm doing well, brother. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Let's start with Kaepernick. Why are the Chargers bringing in RG3 and not Colin Kaepernick, do you think, Jason?
I think it's myopic to frame this around the Chargers. Not that I'm defending the Chargers.
Well, it's just the one
but
specific incident, I guess,
yeah,
the latest.
I think we're well over triple-digit quarterbacks who are on NFL rosters right now because a lot of teams are carrying 4. The fact that no one has made a significant overture, even worked him out, speaks volumes. He's being treated as if he's not a free agent. At some point, I believe there's still the possibility that a team will get themselves in such a bind that all of a sudden one of these owners will be so brave as to extend a legitimate overture to this young man to try to play football with him to save their season. It won't be because he finally saw the light. It won't be because he's instantly progressive or has latched on to some sort of agenda. It will be because he's trying to salvage his season. Until or unless that occurs, it's pretty clear he's being treated as if his name is not on the list of available free agents, is not on the list of players eligible to come in for a workout, and is effectively not an NFL-eligible player.
So, what insight can you provide on what's going on inside his mind, inside his camp? Is he planning on giving an interview to somebody to give his 2 cents on his desire to play football, on what sort of role he's looking for? Because there's so much being filled into the void right now that may or may not be the case, and the void is going to be filled in about 6 weeks with actual football for people to be paying attention to, Jason. So now's kind of the time to strike.
Well, trust me, I've made my overtures towards, hey, I wouldn't mind being the person to tell this story if there's a story to be told. And basically at this point, everything I've heard, every impression I've received is that they're willing to have an open, engaged dialogue with any team, with any owner, with any general manager, with any team president who wishes to. But, you know, him coming out and saying, no, I really still do love football, I mean, I don't know that they think there's much sort of advantageous in that. They believe that it's clear to anybody who may have reached out even in just a cursory manner that, yeah, he wants to play football. Yeah, he's in great shape. Yeah, he's much healthier than he was this time a year ago. And no, he's not looking to break the bank, but he can't sign himself. He can't negotiate with himself. He can't make an offer, you know, on the part of a team and hand it to himself and say, yeah, 3-5 sounds good, let's go do this. It's just not how it works. So it's almost as if you're trying to fight a machine. Would doing some interview or getting something out there immediately convince an owner that, now he's okay to sign? I don't get the sense that they believe that's the case. Now we get in a desperation mode in August or September. Maybe the messaging changes. But the reality is, this one to me is sort of like Ray Rice in that no one's even, I mean, other than Seattle, you know, bring him in the building. But, no one's really given him a legitimate shot to even just show if he could be a number 2 quarterback. And that smells to me a bit like the death penalty.
Well, then let's flip the script a little bit here, Jason LaCanfora. Are the Chargers seriously, if RG3 checks out physically and emotionally, that he's going to be signed by the Chargers and they'll enter the season with him on the roster as Phillip Rivers' backup?
Well, I mean, at this stage, first you have to decide if you think you want him around, if you think he can be an asset, what kind of clay there is that you think they're still there to mold from a really sort of a mental and physical standpoint. And then if you agree to that, then it's a matter of a price point. I mean, what Cleveland paid him last year was utterly ridiculous at the time and looks even more ridiculous now. You're talking about a no-frills, vet minimum, maybe even a minimum salary benefit contract, and then even if that happens, he then has to make your football team, which is by no means a given. I mean, we're not talking about real guaranteed money here. We're not talking about wooing him. We're talking about a camp body and someone who will have to beat out other quarterbacks on that roster to be the number 2. Can he even stay healthy through a preseason? So at this point, the name still, has recognition, and I guess some cachet, or at least it has that Q factor where people are aware of his existence more so than they would be most number 3 or number 4 quarterbacks. But from an X's and O's football standpoint, he's just another guy on the street right now.
All right, so let's talk Andrew Luck, who is not just another guy by any stretch of the imagination and is the hope of the Indianapolis Colts, plain and simple, and he's on PUP. What can you tell us about his readiness for 2017, Jason?
I mean, it's very easy to come out in late July and say he's ready for week 1, and that's what you're going to say, and that's what you have to say. Again, unless you're looking at somebody who clearly is looking at a 3 or 4 month recovery even from this point, then obviously you have, you better come a little closer to the truth. But no one knows. I mean, he's just starting to throw. You don't know if there'll be setbacks. You don't know how the healing process will occur. I mean, certainly you're looking at an unusual training camp for them, in so much as there's no way they're going to expose him to anything. I mean, he's on PUP. He's not going to do anything that's close to actually being in a position where he's in peril or he's eligible to be hit. And then whether it's week 1, week 2, week 3, whenever he's activated, he will have, it'll be quite some time since he's played in anything like game conditions. And again, I can't tell you that, he won't throw 4 days in a row in the middle of August and be like, something's not right. No one necessarily knows that. They're optimistic, and they're optimistic for good reason. And certainly the target date is, we're going to get 16, games out of him this year, by golly, no matter what. But no one has that crystal ball. And so should people be concerned? Yeah. Should they be pulling their hair out? Should they be aghast? Should they be saying the season's over before it began? No.
So Jason LaCanfora of CBS and CBSSports.com joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. What is the more tangible, intangible storyline? The Seahawks locker room or Atlanta's Super Bowl hangover, losing 28-3?
I mean, the Seahawks locker room this has been the case since Pete Carroll built that defense, 2 years into this regime. The first year was slash and burn for good reason. I think they had far and away the most transactions and the most turnover within the first 6 months of Carroll and John Schneider getting there. They gutted the whole team. They had that early sort of weird division run where 7-9 was going to win the team. And then they built that defense. And since then, this is that locker room culture. It's a bunch of alpha males. It is a lot of incredibly strong-willed personalities and guys with a lot of unique personality traits. And Pete Carroll welcomes that, and he juggles that, and he massages that, and he keeps, for the most part, guys from, I won't say going over the edge, but diving completely over the edge to where they're into the abyss. I don't know that there's much new. I mean, it was an interesting story. It was well reported, but this has been going on for years, and they, still have won. What, they and the Patriots, the only team to win a playoff game in the last 5 years. I think they're one of only 3 teams to go to the playoffs the last 5 years. They're, I think, second only to the Patriots in regular season wins the last 5 or 6 years. And they're going to win that division again this year. So I don't know about that one. Atlanta, that's a tough pill to swallow. That's a bigger pill. My colleague Pete Prisco thought I had a heck of an interview with Matt Ryan and a sit-down with him. Everybody should check that out at CBSSports.com, where it's clear that they're not over it. They're not close to being over it, and they're still rehashing it in their minds, and that's just human nature. I think the loss of Kyle Shanahan, coupled with that, it's easy to throw darts at Shanahan for the Super Bowl, and I'm right there with you. Over 17 weeks, do I want him, who will be going into his 3rd year with Ryan, or do I want Sarkisian in his 1st year? It wasn't so great between Shanahan and Ryan that 1st year. There were a lot of kinks, but Matt Ryan was basically a perfect quarterback in the 1st quarter last year.
So
he had a QB rating of like 138 with Shanahan scripting that, those first 15 plays. That ain't there anymore.
Well, the same way that what you just said, Jason, about Seattle, hey, this is just the culture that they've had and they've succeeded within it. You could say the same thing about Dallas, all due respect to Lucky Whitehead. If Dallas loses to the Giants week 1 Sunday Night Football, they're not saying, well, if they only had Lucky Whitehead and that was an unfortunate case of mistaken identity for him. There's a lot of people wondering if Dallas already, the way they've started their training camp, is already behind the 8 ball. They would be if Ezekiel Elliott's out. What can you tell us on Zeke before I let you go here, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, look, I would not be surprised at all if he's handed a 1 or 2 game suspension. The league is going to have to make that decision sooner rather than later. Certainly in the next couple of weeks, usually by the middle of training camp, teams, rightfully so, want to know, am I going to have this player week 1 or not? It's going to change our reps in mid to late August. In terms of their culture, having success, I guess, relatively speaking, in 10-win seasons that then, end up with a playoff defeat for the most part. I mean, I think the culture there is a little off and a little warped. And the idea that you can do what you want Monday through Sunday, but just bring it for Monday through Saturday, but just bring it for 3 hours Sunday, I don't know that it served them all that well. I mean, unlucky, lucky, whatever you want to call them, that's the tip of the iceberg in terms of when you're talking about, bringing in a Greg Hardy and drafting a Randy Gregory and having Ezekiel Elliott and even Dak. I mean, the reason Dak fell was because of off-field concerns. So they've had cultural issues there, and I don't know that, whacking a guy like that now necessarily changes anything.
Jason, thanks for the time. Really appreciate it. We'll chat soon.
Anytime, buddy.
You got it. It's Jason LaCanfora.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on radio stations across the country and audience.
If you liked some of that, get some more of that on the Rich Eisen Show app. Follow all the information you see right here on the Rich Eisen Show.